The chamber was colder than anything Ryan had ever felt before. Metal walls surrounded him like the inside of a machine's heart, humming softly with hidden power. Above him, a ring of glowing lights spun slowly, scanning every cell, every breath, every memory locked inside his blood. He stood barefoot on the steel floor, his pulse loud in the silence, his breath fogging the air. Subject 47, a mechanical voice announced. Human DNA detected, genetic resonance matching. Ryan swallowed hard. He wasn't supposed to be here. People like him, scavengers, runaways, forgotten children of a fallen species, didn't belong inside places like this. This was a facility of the high order, built by alien hands to study what was left of humanity, and what was left was very little. The galaxy had forgotten humans. Once they were builders and dreamers, explorers who touched stars and carved cities out of deserts. But that was centuries ago. Wars, plagues, and conquests had wiped them from power. The stronger species rose, and humans were pushed to the shadows, some enslaved, some scattered, many simply erased. Ryan was one of the last born in the outer colonies, dirty, poor, and invisible. He had never seen Earth, never tasted blue skies, never heard the oceans. All he had were stories. Stories his mother whispered about lions and eagles, wolves and bears, creatures that ruled Earth before even humans did. He used to laugh at them, thinking they were myths. But now, as the scanner glowed brighter, he wondered if those stories were something more. Genetic lineage alignment complete, the machine said. 7 ancestral predator strains identified. Ryan blinked. What? A screen unfolded in front of him, projecting 7 names across the air. Each one pulsed with a different color, like a heartbeat. Megaraptor, apex hunter of speed and precision. Sabertooth, power and ferocity in flesh and fang. Dire wolf, pack instincts, loyalty and relentless pursuit. Leviathan hawk, skyborne dominance and keen sight. Shadow panther, silent unseen, a ghost in the dark. Iron bear, strength beyond bone, unstoppable resilience. Frost serpent, cold-blooded patience, striking with deadly timing. 7 extinct predator signatures detected, the voice continued. All reside within your dormant genome. Choose one to awaken. Ryan's knees almost gave way. He stared at the glowing names, his heart pounding. Was this a joke? How could his body, his weak, fragile body, hold the blood of creatures that had vanished from the Earth long before his species reached the stars? But deep inside he felt something stir, something old, something that wasn't quite human. He stepped closer to the display. Each name seemed to whisper to him. The saber-tooth promised rage, power that could crush steel and enemies alike. The shadow panther offered silence, the gift of moving unseen. The leviathan hawk spoke of freedom, the sky itself bending to his will. The iron bear was unbreakable. The frost serpent was cunning and calm, and the megaraptor speed and killing precision. But one name drew his eyes again and again: dire wolf. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because of the stories. His mother always said wolves never hunted alone. They fought for each other. They lived and died for their pack. Ryan had never had a pack. Not really. He had lived alone, fought alone, survived alone, and he was tired of it. Why me? He whispered to the empty room. There was no answer, only the hum of the machine and the faint pulse of the 7 names. Maybe there was no reason. Maybe he was here because the universe had finally decided that humanity had suffered enough. Maybe it was time for them to wake up. The voice repeated, calm and patient, as if eternity waited for his decision. Which one do you want to awaken? Ryan stared at his trembling hands. They were scarred and thin, the hands of someone who had never been strong, never been chosen. He thought of the people dying in the outer colonies, hunted like animals by the Cathari Empire. He thought of his mother, who died believing humans would never rise again. He thought of the children who had no future, born into a galaxy that had already decided their worth. And then he thought of the wolf, loyal, relentless, protective. The wolf that never walked alone. He took a deep breath. "I choose the dire wolf." The chamber exploded with light. Pain slammed into his chest like fire, spreading through every nerve, every bone. He screamed as his muscles tore and rebuilt themselves, his heartbeat thundering like a war drum. His senses stretched. He heard the distant hiss of pipes, the flutter of insects behind the walls, the steady hum of energy in the cables under the floor. His eyes burned, sharpening, adjusting to details he had never seen before. It was too much, it was overwhelming, it was awakening. When the pain finally faded, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. His fingers dug into the steel, leaving dents where once they would have left nothing. His heartbeat was calm and steady now, slow, powerful, like the rhythm of something ancient. The voice spoke again, softer now, almost reverent. "Activation complete. The dire wolf sleeps no more." Ryan lifted his head. He could feel it not just inside him but around him, behind him, beneath him. An instinct, a calling, a hunger to run, to fight, to protect. He wasn't just Ryan anymore. He was something older, stronger, something the galaxy had forgotten humanity could be. The machine powered down, but the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, electric, alive. For the first time in centuries, a piece of Earth's wild heart was awake again, and it was inside a human. Ryan stood, still shaking but taller than before. The galaxy thought humans were prey. It was about to learn how wrong it was. The silence after the awakening didn't last long. It started with a low vibration beneath Ryan's feet, a trembling that grew deeper and stronger with each passing second. Then the lights flickered. Then the alarm screamed. "Warning," the machine voice echoed through the chamber. "Perimeter breach. Hostile forces detected." Ryan's heart thudded once, heavy and powerful. His senses sharpened instantly, stretching far beyond the room. He could hear distant footsteps, the hiss of laser doors unlocking, the faint metallic clatter of weapons being drawn. And somewhere in that chaos, a voice barked commands in a language he did not know. The Cathari. The name itself felt poisonous. They were the conquerors, skeletal, insected creatures with jagged limbs and armor like shells, the ones who had burned Earth's colonies to ash. They were the reason humanity hid in the corners of the galaxy, clinging to survival like frightened animals. And now they were here. The door burst open with a flash of light and a hiss of gas. 3 soldiers in black uniforms ran inside. One pointed a rifle at Ryan. "Get on the ground, human," he shouted. Ryan did not move. Something inside him, something older than fear, refused to kneel. The dire wolf within him stirred, growling silently beneath his skin. He could smell the soldiers' adrenaline, hear the quickness of their hearts. His vision locked on their every movement. "Last warning," the soldier barked. Ryan's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. And then, before his mind even decided, his body moved. The first soldier barely had time to pull the trigger before Ryan was on him. He moved like wind and thunder, silent but unstoppable. He grabbed the weapon and twisted. Bones snapped. The man screamed. Another soldier fired, but Ryan was already gone, sliding low, leaping forward, slamming his shoulder into the second man's chest. They crashed into the wall. The third soldier ran. Ryan let him. Wolves didn't chase prey that fled, not yet. His chest heaved, his hands trembling. He looked down at himself, blood on his knuckles. 2 men unconscious, maybe worse. A week ago the sight would have broken him, but now he felt something new, something dangerous. It wasn't joy, it wasn't pride, it was instinct. For the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't the hunted. He was the hunter. He stumbled out of the chamber and into the main corridor. The station was in chaos, red lights flashing, alarms blaring, smoke curling from distant explosions. Scientists and workers were running in every direction, screaming for shelter. Some froze when they saw him, their eyes wide, as if they sensed something different about him. "Ryan," a voice shouted. He turned. It was Dr. Elen, the lead geneticist who had overseen the scan. Her white lab coat was torn, her face streaked with sweat and dust. "We have to get to the escape pods." "What about the others?" Ryan asked, glancing at the terrified people behind her. "There's no time," she shouted. "They're everywhere." Ryan's eyes swept the hall. He could hear the Cathari moving, boots against metal, weapons charging. They were coming from both sides, sealing the exits. He clenched his fists. Running would mean leaving people behind, and wolves did not abandon the pack. "Get them to safety," he said. "What about you?" "I'll hold them." Elen stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Ryan, you'll die." He didn't answer. He was already walking toward the noise. They came in waves, a dozen Cathari soldiers with rifles glowing hot. They expected resistance, maybe a few desperate humans with scrap weapons. They did not expect him. Ryan leaped from the shadows before the first shot was fired. He was faster than they could aim, stronger than they could comprehend. A rifle was ripped from one's claws and crushed. Another soldier was hurled into the wall so hard the metal buckled. But the Cathari were warriors. They regrouped quickly, forming a tight circle, firing in controlled bursts. Bolts of plasma sizzled past Ryan, grazing his arm, scorching the wall behind him. Pain lanced through his side, but it didn't stop him. It fueled him. One soldier lunged with a blade. Ryan caught the arm mid-swing and slammed the attacker to the ground. Another charged from behind, but Ryan spun and struck, breaking the creature's mandibles with a single punch. They screamed in their language, calling him a monster, and maybe they were right. The dire wolf was awake, and he was hunting. Minutes later, the corridor was silent again. The floor was littered with broken weapons and broken enemies. Ryan stood in the center, blood running down his arm, chest heaving, vision sharp and wild. Elen appeared at the far end, leading a group of survivors. Her eyes widened at the sight. "By the stars, what did you do?" "What I had to," he said quietly. They moved quickly toward the escape pods, but Ryan's instincts screamed at him to stop. He turned and looked back down the hall. The Cathari weren't finished. He could feel them, more ships landing, more soldiers pouring in. This wasn't just a raid, it was an extermination. And deep inside, something shifted. Fear should have come, panic, doubt, but none of it did. What came instead was a steady, unshakable certainty. He was no longer prey. And if the Cathari wanted to erase humanity once and for all, they would have to go through him first. When they reached the pod bay, Ryan helped the last of the survivors inside. Children cried, clinging to their mothers. Old men muttered prayers under their breath. They all looked at him with the same question in their eyes: will we make it? Ryan didn't lie. "I'll give you a chance," he said. "That's all I can promise." Elen grabbed his arm. "Come with us." He shook his head. "The pack runs, the wolf stays." Before she could argue, he sealed the hatch and stepped back. The pod launched into the darkness, vanishing into the void. Ryan turned toward the echoing halls of the station, now quiet, now waiting. He flexed his bloodied hands. Around him, the air smelled of ozone and smoke and something older, the scent of the hunt. The Cathari had come to finish humanity's story. But this time, the story would be written in their blood. The silence after the escape pods launched was heavier than any noise Ryan had ever heard. The corridors of the station were empty now, no footsteps, no screams, no orders shouted in panic. Just the hum of broken lights and the distant echoes of a ship still under siege. He was alone. Alone but not lonely. Because deep inside him the wolf was awake now. Its heartbeat matched his own, its breath filled his lungs, its instincts whispered in his ears. It told him where the enemy was moving, how many there were, which path they would take. It told him how to survive. It told him how to win. Ryan walked slowly through the metal halls, bare feet silent on the cold floor. Smoke curled from shattered walls. Sparks danced from severed wires like fireflies. He could smell plasma residue, blood, and something else, something alien and rotten. The Cathari were spreading through the station, searching for survivors. They thought they had crushed the resistance. They thought they had broken humanity's will. They were wrong. Ryan stopped beside a shattered window and stared into the black sea of space beyond. Stars glimmered like distant memories, reminders of what humans once were: explorers, dreamers, warriors. He felt a deep ache in his chest. How had they fallen so far? How had they become so weak, so small, so forgotten? Not anymore, he whispered to himself. The wolf inside him growled in agreement. Humanity's story wasn't over. Not yet. The first group of Cathari arrived minutes later. 5 soldiers, their mandibles clattering, their weapons glowing a sickly green. They were cautious now. They had heard what happened to the others. Ryan crouched in the shadows of a collapsed ceiling beam, muscles coiled like steel springs. He watched their every move, the twitch of a claw, the shift of weight, the slight delay in their steps. Every detail was a weakness. Every weakness was an opening. The leader stepped forward, scanning the room with a device. Thermal signature detected. Human. Ryan moved before the word was finished. He dropped from the ceiling like a shadow, landing on the leader and snapping its neck before the others could react. A plasma bolt hissed past his head. He ducked, rolled, and slammed into the second soldier, driving it into the wall. Bones cracked. The third raised its rifle. Ryan grabbed it, twisted the weapon upward, and the shot burned a hole through the ceiling instead. It was over in seconds. When the last body fell, Ryan stood there, breathing heavily, his heart thundering in his chest. His hands were slick with blood, some of it his, most of it theirs. He stared at the bodies, chest heaving. This wasn't the life he had known. He had never been a soldier. He had never taken a life before today. He had always run, always hidden, always avoided conflict. But now there was no room for fear. "Is this what I'm becoming?" he whispered. The wolf did not answer in words. It only pulsed inside him, steady, ancient, proud. And in its silence he understood this was not about rage. It was about balance. The wolf killed not for pleasure but for the pack, and the pack needed him. Hours passed like minutes. Wave after wave of Cathari soldiers stormed the halls, and Ryan met them all. His body moved faster than thought, his instincts sharper than any blade. He used everything: the walls, the shadows, even the station's gravity fluctuations, turning every space into a battlefield. But no matter how many he cut down, more kept coming. Dropships clamped onto the hull like insects. Drones buzzed through vents. The sky outside was thick with warships. And then, for the first time, Ryan felt it: doubt. He knelt beside a bulkhead, his muscles trembling, his breath ragged. His body was strong, but it wasn't unbreakable. Wounds burned across his arms and chest. Blood soaked his torn clothes. The wolf's power was great, but he was still human, and humans could bleed. Humans could fall. His mind drifted to the people he'd sent away, the children clutching their mothers, the frightened scientists who believed they were doomed. They were out there now, fragile and terrified, depending on him to hold the line. He couldn't fail them, he wouldn't. "I will protect them," he whispered, "no matter what." The wolf stirred again, not with rage this time, but with pride. A bond had been formed. Human and beast, heart and instinct. They were no longer separate, they were one. As he rose to his feet, the station shook violently. A massive explosion rippled through the eastern hull, throwing him against the wall. Lights shattered, alarms wailed. And then came the sound: heavy, metallic footsteps. Not soldiers, something bigger. Ryan limped toward the sound, forcing his aching body to move. When he turned the corner, his breath caught. It was a Cathari war construct, 3 meters tall, plated in dark armor, with 4 burning red eyes and a plasma cannon the size of his torso. Its presence was suffocating, its power overwhelming. "Human detected," it hissed in a mechanical voice. "Termination imminent." Ryan wiped blood from his mouth and smiled faintly. "You can try." The beast roared, firing a blast of plasma that scorched the wall inches from his head. He dove behind cover, heart racing. This was no ordinary fight. This was death staring him in the face. But death had never scared wolves. Wolves faced it head-on. He dashed forward, weaving between bursts of plasma, every muscle screaming. He leaped onto the construct's back, clawing at its joints, tearing at wires and plating. The machine roared, thrashing, trying to shake him off. A metal fist smashed into his ribs, pain exploded, but he didn't let go. "For the pack," he roared, driving a stolen plasma blade deep into the construct's neck. Sparks burst like fireworks. The machine convulsed, screamed, and finally collapsed in a heap of smoke and fire. Ryan fell beside it, gasping, his vision blurring. Every part of him hurt, but he was alive, and the station was still standing. He lay there on the cold floor, staring up at the ceiling. For the first time, he felt the weight of everything, the blood, the pain, the cost of fighting back. But beneath it all, there was something else: hope. Because for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had met a human who refused to die quietly. And deep in his chest, the wolf howled not for victory, but for what was coming next. The hunt was far from over. Absolutely. Here's part 4, around 900 words of the story, written in third person, with simple, emotional, and cinematic narration, continuing directly from part 3. This part focuses on hope, leadership, and the awakening of a new resistance, showing how Ryan's fight begins to inspire others. Part 4, The Spark of the Pack, 900 words. The battle-scarred station was quiet again. Smoke drifted through broken hallways and sparks hissed from torn wires. Ryan lay on the cold metal floor beside the destroyed war machine, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Every muscle screamed, every bone ached, but his spirit, that ancient, primal fire inside him, still burned. He stared up at the cracked ceiling, watching small pieces of dust float in the air. For a moment he allowed himself to close his eyes. The wolf within him was silent now, resting but still there, watching, waiting, ready. He had survived, but survival wasn't enough anymore. This was no longer about one man fighting alone. It was about something bigger, something that could change everything. A distant clang pulled him back to reality. Footsteps, not the heavy thuds of Cathari soldiers, but lighter, uneven, cautious. Ryan struggled to his feet, wincing at the pain. Around the corner, a group of figures appeared. They were human, dirty, wounded, and afraid. Is it over?" a woman asked, her voice trembling. Ryan looked at her. She couldn't have been older than 20. Behind her were a dozen more survivors who had hidden deep in the lower levels, too terrified to run. They stared at him like he was something out of legend. "For now," he said softly, "but more will come." The group exchanged fearful glances. A boy with a blood-streaked face stepped forward. "We heard the fighting. We thought we were all dead." "You're not," Ryan said. "Not yet." The boy's eyes narrowed. Are you one of them? You don't move like us. You don't fight like us." Ryan hesitated. How could he explain? How could he tell them that inside him lived the spirit of a predator extinct for thousands of years? That he wasn't just Ryan anymore. He was something older, something born from Earth's forgotten strength. "I'm human," he said simply, "just like you." The boy stared for a long time, then nodded slowly. Then maybe humans aren't finished after all. They moved through the station together, searching for survivors and supplies. Ryan led the way, every step fueled by purpose. His body still hurt, but his senses remained sharp. He could smell danger before it came, hear the faint hum of enemy patrols long before they arrived. Each time they found a group of humans, fear turned to hope when they saw him. Word spread quickly. A man had fought back. A man had killed the Cathari. A man was still standing. Soon there were dozens following him. Then hundreds. Survivors who had once hidden in darkness now walked beside him with heads held high. For the first time in years, they weren't running. They were moving forward. It wasn't just Ryan's strength that inspired them. It was his eyes, sharp and steady, filled with a fire they hadn't seen before. It was the way he spoke, not with promises of victory but with belief. Real, unshakable belief. "Why are you doing this?" the young woman from before asked as they paused in a storage room. Ryan looked at her, his face tired but determined. "Because we've spent too long believing we're weak, that we're prey, but we're not. We never were, we just forgot what we are." "And what are we?" she whispered. "Human," Ryan said. "The most stubborn, reckless, impossible species this galaxy has ever seen. And we don't stop, ever." Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "Then we'll fight with you." The Cathari must have sensed the change. Their patrols grew more frequent, their attacks more desperate. But now they weren't facing scattered, terrified refugees. They were facing something far more dangerous, a pack. Ryan trained them as best he could. He taught them how to move silently, how to use their surroundings, how to fight with whatever they had. They scavenged weapons from fallen enemies, built barricades from scrap metal, set traps in narrow corridors. The humans learned quickly. It was in their nature to adapt, to survive, to evolve. And when the next wave of Cathari came, the battle was different. They expected easy kills. Instead, they were met with ambushes. They expected cowards. Instead, they met warriors. They expected silence. Instead, they heard a sound that chilled them to the core, a human war cry echoing through the steel halls. Ryan fought at the front, his claws tearing through armor, his senses guiding every move. But he wasn't fighting alone anymore. Men and women who had once cowered now charged beside him. Children who had once wept now carried messages and ammunition. The pack had found its purpose. And for the first time in centuries, the Cathari were pushed back. After the battle, the survivors gathered in what was once the station's main control room. The walls were scarred and blackened, but their spirits were brighter than ever. A small girl approached Ryan, clutching a broken pendant. "My father said humans were weak," she said softly. "He said we couldn't win." Ryan knelt so he was eye level with her. "Your father was wrong," he said gently. "We're not weak, we're just waking up." The girl smiled for the first time. "Then I'll fight too." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. He looked around the room at the wounded, the tired, the determined faces staring back at him. They weren't soldiers. They weren't trained. But they were ready. Something inside him shifted, deeper than instinct, older than the wolf. It was hope. Hope bigger than himself. Hope bigger than revenge. Maybe this was why he had been chosen. Not to be a weapon, but to be a spark. As the humans prepared for the next fight, Ryan walked to the shattered window once more. Stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and beautiful. Somewhere out there, the galaxy still believed humanity was finished. Let them believe it. Because here in the heart of a broken station, humanity had remembered who they were. And this time they weren't alone. They were a pack. And a pack does not run. A pack fights. A pack survives. Ryan clenched his fists and breathed deeply. The wolf stirred again, not in hunger but in pride. The hunt wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to all of them. The days that followed felt different. The station, once a tomb of fear and silence, was now alive with movement. Humans walked the halls with purpose, repairing broken systems, building defenses, and training side by side. There was still fear in their eyes, but now there was something stronger standing beside it. Hope. And at the heart of it all was Ryan. He moved through the halls like a quiet force of nature, teaching, guiding, encouraging. He wasn't a leader by choice. He never wanted to be one. But the people followed him anyway, not because of orders, but because they believed in him. Because when they looked at him, they didn't see a scavenger or a fugitive. They saw the future. Still, Ryan knew hope alone would not save them. The Cathari would return, stronger, angrier, more determined to finish what they started. And if humanity was going to survive, they had to stop hiding and start fighting. "We can't just wait for them to attack again," Ryan said during a meeting in the control room. "We have to strike first." The survivors stared at him in silence. The idea was terrifying. Humans hadn't gone on the offensive in decades. They had learned to run, to hide, to survive in the shadows. "Strike them?" an older man asked. "With what? We have no army, no ships, no weapons." "We have more than we think," Ryan replied. "We have courage, we have brains, and we have the element of surprise." Elen stepped forward, her eyes burning with determination. "He's right. If we keep running, they'll hunt us to extinction. But if we make them bleed, if we show them that humans can still fight, we might just change everything." There was a long pause. Then one by one, heads began to nod. Fear didn't disappear, but something stronger took its place: resolve. The plan was simple but dangerous. A Cathari supply ship was scheduled to dock on the far side of the planet, a heavily guarded vessel carrying weapons, fuel, and data. If they could capture it, they would gain resources, technology, and a chance to strike deeper into enemy territory. Failure meant death, but success could change the course of everything. Preparations began immediately. Teams scavenged metal and built makeshift armor. Engineers rewired old drones into explosive traps. Children carried messages, while elders mapped routes through the ventilation systems. Everyone had a job. Everyone was part of the mission. Ryan trained them harder than ever. He taught them how to move like predators, silent, focused, united. He showed them how to read an enemy's body language, how to use fear against them, how to strike fast and vanish before they could retaliate. "You don't have to be stronger," he told them. "You just have to be smarter. Remember, a wolf doesn't fight the bear head-on. It uses the pack. It uses the hunt." The night of the mission arrived. The sky beyond the station was dark and endless, lit only by the distant glow of a dying star. Ryan stood at the head of the strike team, 30 men and women armed with scavenged rifles, knives, and their own fierce will. They wore no uniforms, no banners. They didn't need them. Their unity was enough. "Tonight," Ryan said, his voice echoing in the launch bay, "we stop running. Tonight we stop hiding. We are not prey. We are the hunters now." A low, growling cheer spread through the group. It wasn't loud or triumphant. It was deeper, older, the sound of people remembering what they truly were. The strike ship launched silently, slipping through the shadows of space. As they approached the Cathari vessel, Ryan's heart pounded not from fear but from purpose. This was more than a mission. This was humanity's first howl in a very long time. They boarded the ship under the cover of darkness. No alarms, no resistance, not yet. The first guards didn't even have time to shout before they were silenced. The humans moved as one, flowing through the halls like water. Then the alarm screamed. The element of surprise was gone. Blaster fire ripped through the air, filling the corridors with light and death. Humans took cover, firing back with stolen weapons. Ryan was everywhere, pulling fallen soldiers to safety, breaking enemy lines, clearing paths. His senses were alive, guiding him through the chaos. Every shout, every breath, every vibration in the floor told him where to strike next. "Forward," he roared, "push them back." And they did. Inch by inch, hallway by hallway, they advanced. Blood stained the steel floors. Screams echoed in the darkness. It was brutal, desperate, and terrifying, but they did not break. At last, they reached the control room. Ryan charged through the final door, tackling the Cathari commander in a blur of motion. They crashed into a console, sparks flying as the alien hissed in rage. "Humans," it snarled, "you were supposed to die quietly." "Not anymore," Ryan growled, driving a blade into its chest. "Not ever again." The commander collapsed, and the ship was theirs. When the humans returned to the station with the captured vessel, they were greeted with cheers that shook the walls. For the first time in centuries, humanity had not just survived, They had won. Children danced in the halls. Old men wept openly. People who had once whispered in fear now shouted with pride. The Cathari would hear about this. The galaxy would hear about this. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was rising. Ryan stood apart from the celebration, watching quietly. His body was bruised, his wounds still healing, but his heart felt lighter than it ever had. He thought of the ones they had lost, the ones still hiding among the stars. He thought of Earth, the home he had never seen but still dreamed of. This was just the beginning. One victory would not win the war, but it was enough to prove a truth the galaxy had forgotten. Humans were not prey. They were predators who refused to disappear. The pack had risen. Absolutely. Here's part 6, around 900 words of the story, written in third person, with simple, emotional, and cinematic narration, continuing directly from part 5. This part is more intense and emotional, showing the price of rebellion and Ryan's greatest test as a leader. Part 6, The Price of the Hunt, 900 words. Victory tasted sweet, but it did not last. The captured supply ship brought new hope, new weapons, and new courage to the humans. But it also brought something else: attention. Word of their defiance spread quickly, faster than they had expected, and with it came the fury of the Cathari Empire. Within days, the stars above the station burned with enemy ships. Dozens at first, then hundreds, a fleet vast enough to blot out the light. They were not here to capture or enslave. They were here to erase. Ryan stood on the command deck, staring at the incoming swarm. The scale of it was overwhelming, black shapes moving like a tide, their engines glowing with cold, merciless purpose. "They're coming," Elen whispered beside him. "All of them." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then we fight, every last one of us." The room was silent. Everyone understood what that meant. This wasn't a battle they could win. This was survival for an hour, a day, maybe 2. But if they fell, humanity's spark might die with them. Preparations began immediately. Engineers armed the station's defense cannons. Fighters scrambled to their ships. Volunteers, many of them untrained, lined up to defend the corridors. Children were hidden deep underground, clutching makeshift shelters. Ryan moved among them, speaking softly, touching shoulders, meeting eyes. He didn't give grand speeches. He didn't promise victory. He simply told the truth. "This is our home," he said. "If we run, we lose everything. If we fight, maybe, just maybe, we give our people a future." Fear still lived in their eyes, but something stronger stood beside it: determination. They had tasted victory once. Now they were ready to fight for it again, even if it cost them everything. The Cathari fleet attacked with brutal precision. Waves of ships rained plasma fire on the station, shaking its metal bones. Explosions ripped through corridors. Walls buckled. Alarms screamed. Ryan was everywhere, sealing breaches, organizing defense teams, leading ambushes in collapsing hallways. His body ached with exhaustion, but the wolf inside him would not let him stop. It growled in his blood, urging him forward. "Push them back," he shouted as enemy soldiers poured through a broken airlock. "Hold the line." Blaster fire lit the corridors like storms. The air stank of smoke and blood. Humans fought like demons, using every trick, every weapon, every ounce of courage they had. For every enemy they killed, 2 more took its place. But still they fought. Still they refused to break. Hours passed like minutes. The station burned, but the humans held. Then the Cathari changed tactics. A massive cruiser detached from the fleet and fired a beam directly into the heart of the station. The impact tore through the lower levels, collapsing entire sections. Hundreds died in seconds. Ryan was thrown off his feet, his vision blurring as fire swallowed the corridor around him. He coughed, blood filling his mouth, and dragged himself to his knees. "Status," he shouted into his communicator. Static answered him. Then Alen's voice, panicked and broken. "We've lost the East Wing. Casualties in the thousands. We can't hold much longer." Ryan slammed his fist against the wall. Rage and grief surged through him. Every death was a weight on his soul. Every scream echoed inside his chest. For a moment he wanted to give up, to surrender, to accept that this was the end. But then he heard it, a faint, distant sound cutting through the chaos. Children singing in the shelters below. Their voices were soft, trembling, but they were singing the old earth lullabies their parents had taught them. Tears stung his eyes. No, he couldn't stop. Not now, not ever. Ryan rallied the defenders again. He led them in a counterattack through the burning halls, pushing deeper into enemy lines. His claws tore through armor. His roars echoed like thunder. Around him, humans fought with a desperation that made the Cathari hesitate. But the cost was heavy. One by one his people fell. Friends he had trained, children he had promised to protect, strangers who had believed in him, gone. Each death cut deeper than the last. When they reached the reactor chamber, the heart of the station, only a fraction of them remained. And there, waiting for them, was the Cathari commander. Taller than any soldier, its body plated in black armor, its eyes glowing like molten fire. "So this is humanity's savior," it hissed, its voice a blade of contempt. "A beast playing at being a man." Ryan stepped forward, blood dripping from his hands. "I'm not here to save humanity," he said quietly. "I'm here to remind you what we are." The commander roared and charged. The impact shook the room. They crashed into machinery, sparks raining down like burning stars. The alien struck with brutal strength, hurling Ryan against a wall. Pain exploded through his chest, but he rose again and again. The fight was savage, desperate, claws against blades, instinct against technology. The commander slammed him to the ground, crushing his ribs beneath its weight. "You cannot stop extinction," it snarled. Ryan spat blood and grinned weakly. "Extinction isn't what we do." With a final roar, he drove a shard of metal through the creature's throat. It screamed, thrashing, then fell still. The chamber was silent again, except for Ryan's ragged breathing. But victory had a cost. The station was breaking apart. Fires raged uncontrollably. Airlocks were failing. It wouldn't hold much longer. "Evacuate," Ryan whispered into his communicator. "All units, evacuate now." He stumbled through the wreckage, helping the wounded, dragging the fallen. Every step was agony, every breath a struggle, but he refused to stop. The pack had to survive, even if the wolf did not. At last he reached the final escape bay. Hundreds of humans were already boarding ships, bruised, bloodied, but alive. They turned to him with tears and gratitude. "Come with us," Elen shouted from the hatch. Ryan looked back at the burning halls, the place where humanity had remembered itself. He smiled faintly. "I'll be right behind you." But he knew he wouldn't. Someone had to hold the line. Someone had to make sure they got away. As the last ships launched into the stars, Ryan stood alone in the collapsing station. His body was broken, his vision fading, but he felt no fear, only peace. He had done what he was meant to do. He had woken the pack. And as the station crumbled around him, the wolf inside him howled one last time, a sound of defiance, of hope, of a species that refused to die. The galaxy would remember this day, the day humanity stopped running, the day they fought back. And the hunt was not over yet.